Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another episode of Total War Arena. So, what have we got today? We are on the Tier 8 Roman Premium Spearmen, the Auxilia Palatina. That's probably pronounced wrong, but there we go. So, it's another premium unit from part of the Community Contributors program that I have been gifted by Wargaming. It's fantastic, it's really great that this program is starting to sort of work, so I can bring you guys these premium reviews. Yeah, and I've been playing with these guys quite a lot. I think probably the first thing for me to disclose is the fact is I'm a shocking spear player. I traditionally don't get on with spearmen. I think my highest unit is like tier 4 on spearmen. What are we? If we hop over to the Greeks with Miltiades, oh, I'm going with the slingers. But I honestly am just such a shocking spear player because I just really don't get on very well with them. So yeah, so it took me quite a long time to get the hang of these. So I've been playing quite a few battles, trying to sort of get my head around how they work, get used to the hoplite phalanx a little bit. And see if I can get my head around them so I can bring you sort of a reasonable review of what they are like to play with. And so far I have been very, very impressed. So let's sort of break down into why these units are quite radically different to almost anything else I've come across in this game. So it really all boils down to their defensive stats. Their aggression, which you can just see from the off, is actually really quite low, although not shockingly so. Running with consumables, you can see I'm getting 115 on the melee attack, which tier 8 isn't great, but it's not so shockingly bad as to be a massive problem. Things like, and actually even things like the melee weapon damage, it really isn't that bad. What's that, 240? Again, slightly lower than some units at this tier, but for a premium, 240 really is not too bad. It's just they fall down on things like their flank damage, 46 is really low. Penetration isn't that high, although not that shocking at 29. Impact damage and charge impact aren't great, but they don't have a charge that's completely irrelevant. So, actually having initially just said that it's not great on the aggression, it's actually not so bad. But where they really come into their own is their defensive stats. Now, this comes into basically in the form of just an obscene amount of melee defense. 92 is just insane. If we take, say the Roman tier 8 legionary premium unit, and an equivalent tier premium unit, we'll look at their defense stats and we'll see their melee defense is 59. So we're already significantly higher. Not to mention the fact because it's got a higher base, it means consumables actually run a higher melee defense as well. So I'm getting +9 melee defense from the drill sergeant, which is why I took it basically. So that means, look at my melee defense base is what? 107? I mean, that's just madness. That is higher than most Scipio Cav will get in Oath of Perseverance, with like a +70% melee defense modifier. So that is absolutely ridiculous. Combined on top of that, they get a pretty high base missile block chance of 58, and a shield melee defense of 45. In fact, I'm running this with with Sulla, sorry. So if I run into Fortify, I'm getting a +200% melee shield melee defense. You know, that's going to put that over 100 as well. That means realistically, to be able to sort of start to land hits on these guys, your melee attack is going to have to be up in and around the 200 mark, which is just madness. I mean, that is just crazy. It means to land hits on these guys is really hard because they have such good defensive stats. Of course, it is worth pointing out you can't be in Phalanx and Fortify at the same time, so that is one sort of consequence. You know, if you're in Fortify, then you are not in Phalanx, and if you're in Phalanx, you're not in Fortify, because you cannot. It's got an automatically deactivate when another formation is activated, and being in Phalanx is a formation. But it is a really good sort of last stand ability because it just makes your unit so resistant to enemy attacks. So on top of that, not only do they have just amazing defensive abilities, which makes it really hard for the enemy to land hits, you then get a really strong amount of body armor. Obviously, I'm running them with consumables, which you absolutely should be doing with a premium unit. You know, these guys have no upkeep cost after the battle other than consumables, and they make a good amount of silver, so you should always be running them with consumables. So I wait for Weaponsmith for weapon damage and a bit of extra melee defense, and a drill sergeant for the body armor and the melee defense, really. And that makes their body armor, what's that, 175? Which is really high at tier 8. I don't know, again, we can compare it to the equivalent Roman unit, and okay, they're 10 higher, but you know, these are a spearmen. And on top of that, they get 49 on the shield armor as well. So, you know, facing these guys from the front, if you somehow manage to land a hit against them, you're then not going to be doing a lot of damage from it anyway, because their body armor is so high. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Their main weakness probably is their movement speed, which is a base of 3.8. Which is why another reason why I prefer to run them with Sulla, because yes, you can run them with Germanicus, and presumably you would get Vengeance with them. I haven't got Germanicus up very high, so I don't know. But you know, it's not really going to be a very effective in terms of their movement speed, because you're just going to be a really sluggish unit. I would rather be able to run them with Whip, because this takes them with that 30% movement speed up to around a sort of high 4 on the movement speed, which is actually really quite good for a unit of this sort of type. And really negates one of their biggest weaknesses, which is the movement speed. So yeah, definitely worth running with Sulla in my opinion. To top this all off, they get a heavy thrust, which is just like their basic strike. Obviously works really well in the phalanx. Also works well in fortify as well. If you can push into people and activate it, you get quite a lot of damage. And to make it even better, they also get a peeler, a heavy peeler as well. So they actually do a reasonable amount of damage. Quite a nice little ability, this peeler, actually, just for getting that extra bit of damage in, for throwing at things like enemy javelins and archers if they get too close to you, pinning units down, because obviously when you hit them with the peeler they lose movement speed, because you don't have a charge on this unit or anything like that. That's one of its weaknesses. And then just to top it all off, if you, with the Roman phalanx, and this is true on other Roman spear units like Triarii, you get missile block by being in phalanx. So you actually go from whatever it is now, what's it, 58, and then when you go into that, obviously you're going up to 78. Which, while not going to be resisting all missiles, 78 on the missile block chance really isn't too bad. And presumably one of the consumables, yeah, you can knock that up a bit more with the Armor Smith consumable, but I preferred this one because I wanted the extra melee defense. So yes, they are a pretty insane unit for their defensive abilities, really, and that's kind of what this boils down to. They are just so tough, and that's what makes them really forgiving as a player, particularly as an inexperienced spear player like myself, who doesn't really know what he's doing. I find them very forgiving to play. If I make a mistake, or I get caught off, or I'm struggling to maintain my fatigues, I can just smack straight into Fortify, and the defensive stats come so high that even the way you're fighting against things like Vengeance and stuff like that, where you might be taking some losses, your unit just doesn't collapse really quickly. You get time to think about what you do, time to bring in another unit to support, time to think, right, how am I going to escape out of this? And that is really helpful in the unit, and that's what makes them really nice for sort of newer players, or people just getting onto tier 8 who want to try out a new premium unit. Then yeah, I really recommend them for that sort of thing. So anyway, we're just going to hop into a training room now. I filmed the other day. It's a completely redundant test in terms of anything, proving anything. I just kind of wanted to show you how resilient these guys are from the front in Fortify. We're just going to get attacked frontally with some barbarians, because that's the only unit we had on hand. But hopefully it shows kind of how resilient these guys are to attack. Not so much that any barbarian player should be attacking these guys from the front, but it's just kind of proof of that. And then we'll hop straight into a battle and see what these guys are like on the live servers. So we've loaded into our training room. We've just been messing around a bit with these guys, but I just kind of wanted to show how tough these guys actually are. So I'm just going to go into, say, for like Fortify, which is going to push my shield defense up really insanely high. And you look at the defense ability of these guys, is going to be heading up towards sort of 1400, something like that. So I'm just going to sit here. Let's get our enemies to attack us. And I just kind of want to show I'm not fighting back particularly, anything like that. I mean, firstly, the charge just does nothing. I'm not going to activate my whip or anything like that. Our commander's data, we've not got Fortify on. Not got Prescription, of course, to debuff him. You can see we're rocking around about a 98-96% enemy block. I'm not pushing into him. I'm not going into phalanx. Not doing anything. Obviously, I know in this sort of situation, realistically, he could flank me, but I'm trying to show how tough these guys are. And of course, if this is in a real situation, I would have Prescription on as well, which would be pushing it even higher. And of course, we're getting damage up against him. And that's without even Whip on. I could put Whip on and be gaining another 64% melee attack. He's now gone into Defiance with his units, which is giving him another 35% melee attack. We're still barely taking any hits. You can see the sort of amount of damage we're taking, which is just basically nothing. A few people are getting on the flanks, which are getting a little bit of damage. But we're still easily out damaging him from the front, and that's with his Defiance on. So it just kind of is what I wanted to show, is just how tough these guys are. That 1400 defense, I mean, on top of the fact that they get a base 175 body armor with an almost 50 shield armor, just means that even when they do get hits, it barely does anything. So yeah, kind of an interesting example of how this thing works, and how that, look at it, it just barely does anything to them, and that's why these guys are just utterly the most toughest spear unit I've come across. So, we are loading into the Battle of Rubicon. Where am I going to go? We could head out on one of these flanks a little bit over here, see if we encounter any enemy infantry at this part of the map. Could be a good opportunity. These guys work pretty well on their own and actually have a pretty decent speed. Even though they're a heavy infantry, once you get the whip on them, they actually start going pretty well. Yeah, I think that's where we'll go for the start. And we'll push across into here and see what we see. Okay, so wait for us to load in. What have we got on our team? Quite a bit of artillery, which is a bit of a worry. Just before we get started, I wanted to show you one thing briefly. If I just pull this unit out and then put them into testudo, you'll see a testudo, phalanx. You'll see like their movement speed is pretty slow. You know, they back off but slowly. But as soon as you whip, you see how much quickly they actually their speed increases quite a lot. They actually become a really manoeuvrable infantry unit. Just something I noticed and I thought was kind of interesting. Oh, can we whip ourselves up here quick enough? Going to be a bit of a challenge, but we may be able to pin them down. Just do this. Get everyone whipping. Get a bit of our movement speed going. I don't think we're going to be able to get to this fight in time, but you never know. I'd rather they'd stayed and fight, particularly given how that we could have cut these guys off if we wanted to. There we go. Starting to get these guys pinned down now. Get prescription activated. Bring these guys round. Whip you to negate the effects of, you know, your prescription being activated. Just drag these guys through. You can just go into hand to hand. See how much damage we can get in on these guys. Hard to drag these guys in. Let's try and whip everyone. Okay, turn around, turn around, turn around. Just go into a column. See, even when we get charged, no, it just does no damage at all, does it? We just got charged then by some enemy infantry, and it did, what, 100 damage? Are you guys in? Yes, you are. I don't want you to come out. Sorry. Oh, multitasking is not working. You, just get out the way. Everyone should be in fortify. Everyone can whip. Just attack. Not you. Right. This unit is just going to go straight after their bloody artillery, which is driving me insane. They're trying to back off, which is doing a really good job because their artillery is just getting such damage on me. And it's really making it hard for me to do a lot about it. I just want to get these guys stuck into combat and start to pressure their artillery. Our base is the uncapped, but I am not in a position to get back. Looks like this may be a very short game for us. It just kind of shows show though, you know, we're not taking a lot of damage from them in terms of their phalanx, and we are dealing a lot more to them. We're just taking a lot of fire from their enemy artillery, which is unfortunate. These guys whip and thrust. Oosh. So in this sort of situation now, you know, ideally I should be managing them with into a phalanx. It probably would be better, but you can quite easily get away with just being in fortify. You know, they're fatigued. They can't do any damage to me. You can see we're not taking any damage. You know, and I can kind of just abuse it kind of easily in this sort of situation. And that's kind of why I like them, and I think they're a really beginner-friendly unit, because you can be a terrible player like me, and you can still sort of get away with it, and, you know, what can they do? It's all I want to kill is these stupid artillery players, who are driving me insane today. This one is certainly going to be one to go into phalanx for. Aha! Die! Where's our units gone? Oh, they've ran away. Let's come out to fortify. Let's get our whip going. And let's chase them. Because once we get whip going, once we get out of this mud, of course, we actually get about 4.9 base movement speed. Really quite high for heavy infantry. You know, it really negates a lot of the problems of these guys. Once it just turns into a melee like this, and I'm struggling to maintain fatigue, I know I should be backing off as you do in a proper phalanx, but when you're in a tight situation like this, I find it is just as effective to just not worry about it and just to go into a normal fortify. Obviously, you can't have fortify and hoplite phalanx on at the same time. It does not work like that. Bring you round, and you can keep up the pursuit. How is our base doing? Couldn't be described as doing well, could it? start to get incentive back, but it's going to take such a long time for them to get back. You can see, look, they've taken thousands of points of damage. It doesn't really matter to me because I can just sort of abuse the mechanic in a way and just keep up the pressure on them. They soon fatigue, and then that's soon going to be the end of their game. I don't think our units are going to get back in time, and I think we are going to be absolutely capped out because all our artillery is caught up and all the rest of our forces are messing around. So no, it is an unfortunate defeat. I should perhaps have sent a unit back earlier. I was just kind of getting caught up. I wanted to show you how these guys fighting hand to hand. So I think that was an example of really not how to play them, but how you can get away with playing them because they're really high defensive stats. Obviously, you've always got that decision between hoplite phalanx, in which case you're going to be sort of really applying more damage, and just going into fortify if you just want to leave a unit and not really have to worry about it. Because once in that fortify, they just take so little damage, whatever they're against, really. Even if it's a Vengeance Germanicus, the amount of damage they're taking really isn't that high. So really not much of a problem. It gives you a bit of an idea of what I'm earning in terms of battle earnings. You know, obviously there's only the consumable replenishment cost. I've only made about 16,000 here. Not particularly great considering it wasn't a good game by any stretch, but 2,000 aggression, not a a shocking game. So yeah, but then at tier 8, it is at least a profit, and it's not doing too badly for me. And obviously you get a good bit of free experience, almost 1,000 free experience, and obviously I'm leveling Sulla up a little bit more as well. So let's hop into a second battle with these guys and see if I can sort of play them slightly better and actually get the phalanx to work a little bit better rather than looking like a complete noob. So I'll see you in the second battle. So we are loading into our second battle on Georgian. Come on, we have high hopes that this is going to be played a little bit better this time, rather than the sort of chaos that was the first battle. I'm rather ashamed of that one, really. So let's see how we do. See if we can get into the hoplite phalanx. Let's see if we can work a bit better, manage our fatigue properly, and how it should be done. See if we can show how to play it properly. Although, don't get your hopes up too much. If it all goes wrong, I'll just be knocking into fortify. And then, maybe that is a fair comment on these units, though. Obviously there's a whole range of player levels and skills in this game. Me being certainly at the lower end. But, the ability to, when you make a mistake, get into a bad situation, just to smack into fortify and know that your unit is going to deteriorate, as long as it doesn't get routed. So it's going to deteriorate so slowly because the amount of damage it's going to be taking is just so low that it's not really a problem. And that's nice because it gives you time to think. It gives you time to bring in reinforcements, time for allies to turn up. And that is probably a genuine, serious positive for these guys. So I don't think it's necessarily something to be completely dismissed. Anyway, let's keep advancing up. We've got quite a few archers and stuff moving with us. Are there any enemies we've seen? So enemy phalanx, pikemen, that's the word, down on the other side of the map. Nothing for us to worry about too much. Lots of spearmen going over that side. So we have some Germanicus Eagle cohort coming up. That's fine, they're going to get forced into Testudo. So let's move up with a couple of units. I'm going to keep a unit back. Looks like our veterans of Trebia want to get stuck in our Carthaginians. Oh, flanking. Let's get our whip going. Get into position. And let's straight into a phalanx if we can. So let's keep these guys. Let's give our heavy thrust. What are these guys? Berserkers. Okay, barbarians. I should have thought these would be a problem for me. Let's keep everyone whipped. Managing my fatigue on these guys. This is what I'm trying to do. Oh no, made a mistake, made a mistake. This is probably why you shouldn't drag select. Trying to keep these guys hemmed in. This is just madness. But it kind of goes to show, look at the amount of damage we are doing now in fatigue. Well, we are taking a lot of fatigue, but the amount of damage we are doing in terms of our damage to an enemy. Trying to keep our whip on. Where's our other unit? What are you doing, man? Quickly, man. Oh, this is going to hurt. No, well, it hurt, but not that bad. So, now we've got our problems going. Because now I've got to try and manage all these units. And we're going to get rear flanked again. This is definitely a... Oh, for God's sake. Can everyone not leave me alone? Just come out of phalanx. Chase these guys down. I'm trying to make a bit of a job of protecting our archers. I think these guys are probably going to be routing very soon. So both these guys are now in Fortify, and we are in trouble. Let's get a prescription on. We should have had that on earlier. So we had a real good start against those barbarians, and now we are struggling a lot more because we just got completely overwhelmed. There's really not a lot of a way for me to escape out of this sort of situation. I'm just completely double flanked, and there's not a lot that we can do. So let's just try and get stuck into these Sociais. Try and get some damage on these guys. Of course, it means we've now lost our prescription, which is a bit of a shame. Go for our Fortify. Let's try and get some damage on these guys at least. Go for our Spear Thrust. We're all in a bit of chaos, so that's probably not doing as much in the favours in terms of our defensive stats, although we are still kind of outplaying, out-damaging these barbarians. Now our Fortify is on the rise. You know, our defensive stats is 1500. Okay. You know, we're still on the road, so our melee defense is 128. You know, that probably exceeds their melee attack anyway, so... But then, combined onto the fact we've got a... Wow. Shield melee defense of almost 120 as well. I mean, what chance do they stand? I mean, it's just harsh, isn't it? So we've also got these Romans starting to get stuck back in. Are they in Vengeance? Yes, they are. Okay. So we'll see how our guys fare perhaps against these Vengeance guys while we are in... Fortify. Of course, we haven't got a prescription on, so it means we are going to be taking a lot more damage, and it looks like we are. You can see we're struggling to maintain a defensive stat. So I'm going to go for Thrust. Out of Fortify, Whip. Let's try and get the hell out of here. There's going to be the Barbarians that limit our ability to escape, though, unfortunately. And I don't know where I'm going to run either. We're winning this battle, so if I can just get away for a bit, we might stand a reasonable chance. We got into Phalanx. I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference for us. Let's just try and sort of work our way through, or work our way back at least. We're completely surrounded though, so it's going to be a pretty hard one for us. We killed Arminius. Now we are on a real defensive retreat. I'll whip ourselves to try and get going. All that's going to risk our morale. We could get rear flanked again by that cavalry. Kind of goes to show how these guys work nicely though in terms of their... Oh, we are doomed now if they come right round behind us. But we have actually managed to rack up quite a bit of damage considering how utterly outflanked we have been. And now I'm just trying to keep pace for these Romans. They are now out of Vengeance though, so maybe it's time to reform up. Nice if our guys can pull back a little bit. Will I get a javelin off in time? No, I won't. So let's just see how we hold in this sort of situation. We'll keep ourselves whipped. They should struggle to get into us. Yeah, this is kind of the perfect situation in this sort of gap we find ourselves in. He can't really force ourselves into us. We could just sort of keep him going. And of course, if he turns to run, I can catch up with him again because we are quicker than him with our almost 5 movement speed. Let's keep our whip going. This is nice. So far, no damage. 8,000 damage to the Romans. Obviously, he has lost his Vengeance because he activated it earlier, and that's what's working well for us. Oh, okay. Our fatigue is getting high, so let's keep pulling back. Keep our whip on. Go for a javelin. But let's do a little bit of damage. So our fatigue's looking good. So let's go back into him now. See what we can do. Perhaps pushing a little bit quickly here. Don't want to push in too hard. I pushed in probably a little bit too hard there. I know, wasted that heavy thrust. But all in all, you know, not doing too badly, are we? So let's just try and keep the pressure on him, up on him like that. Push into him a little bit more. Stop there. Just see what we can do. Maybe we should just go to Fortify now to finish him off. Always hard to finish people off in this sort of situation. As our defensive stats start to rise, he shouldn't be able to get any damage on us, and we should be able to kill him like that. Cool. So what else have we got to deal with? We've got some more Romans coming, some more victims to come into our pike phalanx. So let's push down this little bit of a road here. We're going to phalanx, take very little damage on the charge, and now we can just sort of stand here, really. We'll wait for our fatigue to build up. You know, we cannot get past us. Blocking in people in this sort of situation is just perfect. These guys actually excel at this sort of thing. And you can see we're getting 100% damage. And we're just taking no damage at all. He really can't do anything against us. Let's push into him a little bit. Don't want to overdo it, just a little bit. And hopefully we can force him back. Let's go for heavy thrust. We'll knock him back. And then let's push into his last unit. Keep our whip going. And there we go. Dead! So, I mean, it goes to show that a phalanx can work really well in the right sort of situation. Obviously, that would have worked just as well if that was a bigger unit or 3 units of blob Romans all pushing together. Obviously, it's harder when they are in Vengeance, but you have to consider when we were fighting that Germanicus when he was in Vengeance, we didn't have prescription on, and we were still blocking around 50% of his attacks. You know, and when you're considering that Vengeance, you know, is probably adding 70-80% to his melee attack and weapon damage, I think we held up really well. And if we'd sort of knocked that down with a minus 60% on our prescription, I think there's a real case to say that we would have been borderline blocking the bulk of the damage there, and we've been really tanking that Vengeance quite well. And that's what I've found in some other battles as well. You might not be winning, but you can certainly delay and tank Vengeance pretty well. And with the speed of these guys, if you want to just break out of it, then you can, as we saw. You know, we even managed to get away from those Barbarian Berserkers, because that 4.9 movement speed is actually really quite good. And yeah, I think that kind of sums them up pretty perfectly. Let's just have a quick look at our stats, for that game, if it will let me load. So 2,200 aggression, and how much did we earn? Around about 15,000. But again, a nice, almost 1,000 free experience. That seems to be sort of the going rate for these guys. Just make them a pretty decent unit, and they just work so well with Sulla. They are just the perfect combination. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of what these auxiliaries are like. Yeah, I really would recommend them. They're a really nice unit to play, particularly I think as sort of if you're a newer player and looking to get into a sort of a tier 8 unit. Obviously, I think you shouldn't just be at tier 2 and skipping your way up to tier 8 or something like that. I think you want to be getting up to tier 7s or tier 8s with tech 2 units first. But if you want to learn a bit more about Spearmen and you're sort of up around the sort of tier 7 and 8 mark, then I would recommend this as sort of an introductory premium unit. I think it's quite nice and it's quite forgiving, particularly for people like me who, you know, are truly terrible spear players. I played very little spear games over my time. You know, this must be about my 30th or 40th Spearman game ever, so I find them pretty forgiving for someone who doesn't really know what they're doing with them. So yes, hopefully that's an interesting review for you guys. Let me know what you think about these in the comments down below. What do you think of this? They're absolutely mad 1500 defensive stat ability. Just makes them pretty insane. And yeah, I shall see you all on the next video. Thanks, guys.